Welcome in, everybody. Thanks for joining us for our webinar today. We're going to give everyone a couple minutes to come in, so grab some water, grab some coffee, your drink of choice. And while you're waiting, let us know where you're calling in from. And we also do have a poll running, so definitely give us your answer there. So I'm calling in from semi-sunny Boston. It's getting cooler here. Dan, want to say where you're calling in from? And Steve?
Yeah, I'm calling in from right outside Baltimore.
Nice.
I'm in Traverse City, Michigan. So
very nice.
The northern part of Michigan.
Amazing. We got a Toronto in here. London, very cool. Awesome. As people are joining, also feel free to drop questions in. We'll do our best to answer everyone's questions, though we do have a bunch that we plan to cover. Awesome. New York, Hamburg, very cool. Also feel free to drop what you're hoping to gain from this discussion in the chat. Let us know. And keep an eye out. We'll have polls going throughout that will pull up on the screen, so make sure to be ready for those. Nice. Welcome in, everybody. Grab some water. We'll get started in about 1 minute.
Man, Michigan State beat up on our Terrapins here.
Yeah, I see that. I see that comment. Right about that.
All right.
Beautiful Virginia Beach. All right, we got some folks in. We have a lot to cover, so we're going to get going. Again, I wanted to welcome you all. I am Lauren Gibson. I work with Zentail in their marketing team. I have Steve and Dan here. They're going to give introductions, but just to give a little idea of how this will go, it's a casual AMA-style discussion. We have a bunch of questions we're going to tackle. That being said, there's been some awesome questions submitted ahead of time, and you're all here to ask your questions. So we'll do our best to answer what we can, and questions we don't get to, we'll try to follow up after. So drop them in the chat as we go through. You don't have to wait until the end when we do our Q&A. But yeah, feel free to share your thoughts in the chat as well. So to get started, we'll get started with Dan, if you don't mind giving a quick introduction and also giving a quick overview of Zentail and what Zentail does.
Yeah, awesome. Dan Sugarman, I'm the co-founder and CEO here at Zentail. What Zentail does, we are a software platform that makes multi-channel simple. We sort of synchronize all your data into one central source of truth across every function, basically that's required by the online sales channels, like the marketplaces like Amazon, Walmart, eBay, Target, whatnot, as well as the storefronts like Shopify, Ecommerce. We synchronize, we have OMS, IMS capabilities, which synchronizes orders, inventory, takes really complicated back-end setups and translates that to sort of a single quantity number for those channels, as well as, I think our biggest differentiators are on the listing side, which is a huge difficulty and very important for success. Automating those workflows and automatically getting a central catalog translated into high quality listings anywhere that you want to sell.
Amazing. Steve, want to introduce yourself and tell us about eFulfillment service?
Sure. Thanks, Lauren. My name is Steve Bulger. I'm the president here at eFulfillment service. Our company provides warehousing and order fulfillment services for online sellers. And a lot of fulfillment companies out there, we're a bit different in that we work with sellers of all types and sizes, a lot of flexibility. We don't have the big spend requirements or order volume requirements that a lot of fulfillment companies do. And been doing this longer than most companies out there. Been at it for almost 25 years. Family owned and operated company, and really just hang our hat on our level of service and the fact that we control all aspects of our operation, including an in-house development team that's developed a lot of integrations to make things really easy for our clients, including with Zentail, which we'll get into a little bit more today. So looking forward to the discussion.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, to kick us off, I'm going to pull up this poll we have going because it's relevant, but would love to hear, and either one of you can start, but which marketplaces are showing the most growth opportunities right now. And you can kind of see what people are saying for their business. But yeah, Dan, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. And yeah, I love seeing the responses here. This is really helpful. Not surprising that Amazon is leading the way. Amazon is, typically where we see people having the most success as it comes to marketplaces. We're excluding sort of first-party web store sales here. Walmart is often folks' second choice. Not surprised to see some numbers there. What we've seen, we have a ton of data here at Zentail. We track across all marketplaces from a number of different sources, as well as data from our customers and where we actually see success. We're really excited about the growth opportunities on particularly Walmart and Target Plus in the US. eBay, we certainly see a ton of GMV going through, on the same sort of level as Walmart, Target Plus. We see less success from newer expansions into eBay. That might be because there's sort of specific categories that do really well on eBay, as well as it seems like, the history on eBay has been really important. So we see a little, less success. Not surprised necessarily that people aren't looking there for their big 2025 goals. I do think that folks should take a look at Target Plus, because we've had a lot of success getting approvals through, which is really difficult. They rely on partners like Zentail. There's only a couple of us that they rely on for their sort of pipeline for new sellers on Target Plus. They're very exclusive. They have a lot of eyeballs and a very small catalog. So I think that's one area that people might not be looking at that they should take a look at. If you can get approved for Target Plus, I think it's definitely worth it. Walmart makes a ton of sense. Outside of these top ones, I see other, TikTok is one that we hear a lot over here. We have yet to sort of hear, a lot of folks are really a handful of folks even having a ton of success over there. I know that they have a lot of strategies that are creating a lot of commerce, but I think it might be a little more different than what's typically successful on Amazon. It might be more geared to certain types of brands. And it seems like a lot of the success on TikTok might be, if you have a strong influencer strategy that goes to, a separate place that might not be on TikTok Shop. But I know that people are excited about that. We just haven't seen that today. I'm guessing that might be part of the other, but I'm also interested I see Etsy on there. Etsy is great if you have sort of the handmade custom products. It's not so great if, it's more of a general what sells well on Amazon. So I think that one's really fantastic, depending on the category. And there's others that are, fantastic for other categories, like Newegg for electronics, whatnot. But yes, Steve.
Yeah, great answer, Dan. I think he covered it pretty well. I agree on Amazon. Obviously, they're the 500-pound gorilla in the space. So in general, a lot of online sellers turn to marketplaces just because it's a little bit harder on occasion to set up your own Shopify store, BigCommerce store, and get traffic, right? I mean, where are you going to get it from? You're going to try and outrank these behemoths in Google, or are you going to try to have more of a social media type strategy? So that's the benefit of marketplaces there, to get all this traffic. And so if you can figure out their algorithms and how to do well there, then yeah, the sales kind of come. Amazon's great for general e-commerce, like I said. I know Walmart's made a lot of effort and grown a tremendous amount over the last 12 to 18 months. We're hearing from more sellers that while Amazon's great and they can generate a lot of sales, they're getting more and more difficult to work with in some ways. Inventory level requirements makes it kind of difficult and costly for a lot of online sellers. We support them in that we can provide overflow storage. We call it FDA prep. So if you're sending 10 pallets of stock to the US from your supplier, Amazon may only want 2 of those pallets. So we're going to park the other 8 because it's too expensive to store those. So bring to us, and we store them very cost effectively and can prep and label and everything and replenish Amazon's warehouses. So yeah, I agree on Target Plus. I think, it's a little bit more of a curated marketplace at the moment, and maybe a little bit more difficult to get onto, but then it's not as saturated from a seller standpoint. So I think if you get on there and you get on there successfully, and like Dan said, I think benefiting from a partner like Zentail really helps, then that you could be more likely to be successful than competing with, hundreds or thousands of sellers on Amazon.
Sure.
I have one other thing to add. I feel like I left out of my answer that typically we hear often. There's not that many marketplaces in the US market that generate a lot of sales. And I think that this is one spot that a lot of people get tripped up on. Trying to get to more marketplaces doesn't necessarily mean an increase in sales. Doing a really good job on the best ones that generate an outsized, sort of source of revenue is what generally makes sense. We do a lot of research. We track a lot of marketplaces. The typical long tail marketplace only generates around $5 million in GMV a year. So while they might be eager to get sellers on and do a lot of marketing, and it might feel right to try and install something to get you everywhere, we take a different approach here at Zentail, and that's more, headlined by our top end goal, which is to generate GMV. If you can do really well on these marketplaces we're talking a lot about, that's going to be the best way to generate GMV rather than trying to get to some spots that there's just no eyeballs on.
Sure. Yeah, great call out. Steve, and you can answer this, and then Dan, you can join, but you've kind of both hinted at some factors to look into, like Etsy is great for handmade products. What are some top factors sellers should be considering when they're trying to figure out which marketplaces to expand into?
Yeah, sure. Great question. I think to kind of piggyback on what Dan was saying in terms of trying to spread your brand or your presence, too much, then, maybe you're just, you're kind of trying to be a jack of all trades, right? And that's not always the best strategy. You're spreading your resources too thin. You're trying to have a generic approach to marketplace selling when there are different nuances and rules and demographics associated with different marketplaces. Etsy is a great example. Caters toward handmade, more personalized products, and you're going to get a different audience on that marketplace than on Amazon or Walmart, which are, might be more price conscious sellers in general. So certainly demographics play a role. What is your product? Who's your target market? Is Amazon the right approach? Again, you're going to be competing with a lot of people. Can you be as price competitive, or are you going for more of a kind of niche type audience where you can price it a little bit higher because they want something, a little more unique? So costs and fees, just the overall level of competition. Is your audience strictly in the US versus overseas? Different marketplaces have, different levels of reach. And then maybe what kind of level of brand control do you want? Amazon's commonly known for, they control a lot of, they're not really your customers, they're more Amazon customers. And that's kind of the case in general with a lot of these, but some like Etsy or maybe like a Target Plus, you have a little more control over your brand on those platforms. And then, what are your brand strengths? Dan talked about TikTok. We're hearing a lot about TikTok, and currently we integrate through that platform via Shopify. So we haven't been successful yet at doing a direct integration with TikTok because they haven't been super responsive, but we're able to pull in orders automatically through Shopify, and we have seen some success with TikTok too. And so is your brand great at, the social media and the creative part of that and building that audience on your own rather than, again, trying to have Amazon or maybe Walmart build all that marketing?
Sure. Dan, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think one big key thing is probably scale too. A lot of people, or what I think a lot of people might not ask that's important there is, when should I try to expand? And my general advice here might be contrary to what people might expect me to say, which is like, we sell Zentail, we sell multi-channel, go everywhere right away. That's not what I believe. I think, you want to have something interesting. You want to prove the market demand. There's a couple of sort of proven ways to do that today. Steve said it a lot earlier, but Amazon's got a ton of eyeballs. They do all the marketing for you. If you can come in and generate some success on Amazon, then it makes sense to sort of expand from there, not just be an Amazon business. The same thing with Shopify. If you're able to do your own marketing, if you're able to, succeed in places like Facebook and Google, if you're able to create an audience through online forums, there's lots of paths that people have built a sort of community and started to expand on Shopify. That's another common path. I would say once you get to bare minimum $1 million in revenue on a single sales channel is when you might start to think about the multi-channel approach. And as you scale from there, the impact is bigger and bigger. So, once you get to 5 million, you can have a really outsized return on ROI from adding on new channels. And, beyond that, again, you can be looking for, adding on whatever percentage of sales. If your primary thing is Amazon, being able to tack on, an additional 30% of sales for doing multi-channel might make sense at a certain scale, not another. If you're able to start to afford a staff and expand and buy the software that you need to be successful, buy the fulfillment side that you need, that's when it might make more sense to expand.
Sure, yeah. That kind of segues into my next question, talking about like a successful launch on a new marketplace. How successfully you launch can really determine how much money you're going to make, how much that marketplace will deliver. So what key factors do you think contribute to a successful launch? And we do have a slide here that we can pull up. It's kind of helpful. Dan, if you want to take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start off even higher level than this slide, but typically the goal is to get 80% of your catalog live on that new marketplace. It's really difficult to do this. There's two main issues that people have when they want to expand to new marketplace and try and hit that 80% threshold. Based on our data, by the way, if you get, let's say on Walmart, if you can get 80% of your catalog that's live and for sale on Amazon, our users that do that typically hit that 20% of GMV that they're hitting on Amazon over on Walmart. So that's where you can start to hit that 10 to 20% GMV on the Walmart marketplace. To be able to do that's really difficult. There's two main challenges that people have. One is getting 80% of the listings compliant with Walmart's standards. And the other part is getting the fulfillment compliant with Walmart standards. There's a number of ways that you can do that. I'm saying Walmart here, but this is any marketplace. Can you use Amazon to fulfill anymore? A lot of folks coming over from Amazon, they start on Amazon. They know how to fulfill products by getting it into FBA. When you try to expand marketplaces, that's typically not allowed. And you're going to be slapped for doing so, if not completely removed from selling on that marketplace. So the fulfillment piece is really difficult. The listing piece is really difficult. And then beyond that, once you sort of hit that, what we call it listing uptime, it's that published percentage. It's how much of your current catalog is actually for sale, as well as has inventory that people can buy. If you can hit that 80%, that's the first lever for success. That's where you can get to that, again, 10 to 20%. And then to get towards 20% is really that listing quality. So where's my listing showing up in the search rank? Is it showing up in the filters properly? This is how people are going to discover and search for products. If you have really high listing quality, this actually creates a sort of a flywheel where you generate more and more sales on that channel.
Awesome. Yeah. Steve, anything to add on key factors, what to kind of ensure you do to be successful?
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think having the right tools and partners. Marketplace selling is, a little bit, it's different than selling on your own web store where you control everything and you can control, shipping times and inventory accuracy. And if you get those things wrong, it's not great, but, you don't get necessarily penalized other than maybe losing a customer, which isn't great. But with marketplaces, you have to have your inventory up to date and accurate. And when you get to different channels, that makes it more difficult, whereas that's where a platform like Zentail comes into play, just to make sure everything is up to date in real time and that you're not overselling, you're not underselling. And then from a fulfillment standpoint, that things are going out on time, delivered on time. Because if you don't do these things, then the marketplace will penalize you. And especially when you're new to that marketplace, they've got lots and lots of sellers. So if you're not doing it right, you're not going to be off to a great start, and you're going to have to overcome some big hurdles to get, good visibility on that marketplace. So making sure you have the right tools and partners in place for the marketplace selling, because it's a different animal. And again, just back to, is this the right marketplace for my brand? Maybe I'm not trying to get on 5 or 6 marketplaces at one time. Maybe Amazon is right because I have a very price competitive or unique product, but maybe not. Maybe it's a Target Plus or an Etsy or more of a sort of a niche type marketplace. So just really doing your homework in terms of what are your brand strengths, what are your product strengths, what are your differentiators, and what marketplaces, best align with that.
Yeah, that's great advice. Amazing. Speak tools that can help you. Would love to dive a little more into the integration between Zentail and eFulfillment service. Steve, would you like to kind of talk to that and explain what benefit that brings to sellers to have that integration?
Yeah, sure. So Zentail, as Dan has explained, it really allows sellers to make sure that their product listings are up to date and optimized. It allows you to scale and build out marketplace listings more easily, which is really helpful and beneficial. And as I said, making sure inventories is up to date and accurate as possible. And that's largely where our integration comes in. So with our integration, as orders come in, Zentail can consolidate orders from multiple channels, which is excellent. And then everything kind of filters into our system, and we will see orders come in real time. We go out and pick and pack and ship those out of our warehouse, and then we can push back inventory quantities right away back to Zentail, which can get pushed to the different marketplace sales channels in real time, and then tracking information as well to kind of get to the end customer as fast as possible. So Dan can speak to this a little bit more, but if you have a pile of inventory, I've got 1,000 units of this SKU and I'm selling on 3 different channels, this is where Zentail can also help in terms of how do I allocate that inventory to those different channels, and maybe you even prioritize certain channels over others because it's just a better channel for you, or maybe that marketplace again has stricter rules around overselling a product and what can happen if you do that. So go ahead, David.
Yeah, totally. And I think this is one of those things where it's like the dream of online selling. In the old world, like you're going to pick up, you're going to buy a product that has to be physically in the store to buy it, right? And then you have online, which is totally different. You no longer need that old school distribution channels. You can sell from a shared stock of inventory. That's the promise, right? We have all this product here. There's all these virtual storefronts. They're all going to be picked from the same spot, and we can have all this inventory available. But in reality, it hasn't really shook out that way because, in sort of taking control of the fulfillment experience, the guest experience for the customer experience on Amazon, they built, they spent trillions of dollars on physical infrastructure for their FBA program, which has created a new sort of paradigm where you have to have your inventory with Amazon, and Walmart is sort of copying that approach. And now you have to have your inventory with Walmart. And if you're starting on a new sales channel, then you have to have your inventory somewhere else. So that's creating a really unique challenge for folks. And I think what's so great about eFulfillment service is that you can actually have all your inventory in one spot and actually live that sort of dream. And then when you want to expand to a new sales channel, you're already compliant from a fulfillment standpoint. And the catalog is already translated from Zentail's platform, so you can just, as close to a click of a button, sort of launch on that new sales channel, see any new requirements you might have. We make it really easy to learn the intricacies of the channel without having to learn the intricacies of the channel. And eFulfillment service actually creates that sort of FBA experience everywhere. And Steve, I believe you guys do provide that FBA service for Amazon as well, right? Like this is
we support we work with a lot of Amazon sellers, and we do ship Amazon orders directly to the end customer. So we can do that for a seller if they want. We'll integrate with their Amazon store. That's more multi-channel fulfillment.
Sorry, I meant specifically fulfilled seller fulfilled Prime is something you guys offer today, right?
No, we don't actually.
Oh,
It's something
sorry.
that we got shut down a while ago, and they don't really take
Man.
on any new fulfillment companies. But yeah, I mean, we're super honest and transparent with our clients and our prospective clients, and if they're on Amazon or they're thinking about selling on Amazon, we'll talk with them about their options. You could have us fulfill it, and there are a lot of advantages to that, and often more cost effective. The downside potentially is that you don't get that prime eligibility on Amazon's marketplace because you kind of have to go through FBA in order to get that. And in fact, Amazon's kind of under a big antitrust lawsuit because of the way they leverage your fulfillment service to do well on their marketplace. But yeah, I mean, if our clients want to do FBA, great. Again, maybe we can help them more with what we call our FBA prep service, stocking overflow. So it's not a direct to consumer shipping relationship, at least for that channel. It's more, we're going to replenish Amazon warehouses to make sure you get a cost-effective storage solution.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like anyone selling on Amazon is going to want to have that Prime badge, just like you're going to create a lot of sales. It sounds like you guys are compliant and based on all the data that we have with all of the sort of standards for delivery for most of the badging across all the marketplaces. So you don't necessarily need to use WFS if you have a fulfillment service, and somewhere like Target has really strict delivery requirements with no in-house fulfillment option. So it can be really difficult if you have to try and stand that up on your own. That's gonna be really, really hard to do. So if you have something like a fulfillment service, you can actually sort of expand very quickly and get that badging that's gonna be important for sales without needing to do something different for every different marketplace.
Yeah, and you touched on it, Dan, in terms of sellers are just kind of sick and tired of having to spread out their inventory too much. Amazon requires FBA, Walmart might kind of push you to their fulfillment service, but it's not a requirement, and they're much smaller than FBA. Target, your own sales channel. So that's, like I said, where our benefit comes in. Send it to us, and we can handle multiple marketplace channels or your own web store, and give you a lot of flexibility in terms of how you ship. For instance, with Target Plus, they generally want orders delivered within 5 business days at a maximum. And so we give our clients, e-commerce sellers, the flexibility. We can say, if you only want to rate shop between multiple shipping methods with each order, and we'll account for dimensional weight, actual weight, and location, and then pick the cheapest method. We have that option. We can also combine that with a transit time requirement. It needs to be there in 3 days. Okay, we'll filter out everything that won't get there in 3 days, and then we'll rate shop from there. So we have the ability to cater to marketplace sellers in that way, and also prioritize marketplace orders when needed, given those strict requirements they sometimes have.
Amazing. So I want to transition a little more into multi-channel selling, obviously, and talking about EFS and Zentail. Those are tools that can help make multi-channel selling easier. But Dan, can you speak a little to what the common challenges sellers are facing, what kind of pitfalls new sellers should avoid? And we have a poll going too that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think, again, folks that I speak to typically, they know how to do somewhere like Amazon really well, or maybe they know how to do Shopify really well. And when they expand, they continue to do Amazon or Shopify really well, but they may not understand the new marketplaces as well. They may not understand why they're not having success there. Typically, they might try putting up a SKU or two to see how it goes. And it's really difficult to learn the differences from the sales channels. So that's why we really we focus on making it as dead simple as possible to get the new requirements down without having to do a lot of work. So we can automatically take that sort of Amazon setup that you have, which has a ton of really valuable structured data, and translate that automatically into a language that Walmart needs it in, or Target needs it in. And then we could highlight any sort of gaps in your data that's new requirements for that sales channel. Oftentimes too, folks don't realize that there's been changes in requirements, and this affects their ability to sell, whether the listing becomes totally unpublished or it starts to get lapped by listings that are hitting the new standards and in listing quality, right? So I think this is where a lot of folks just don't have any visibility. That's why we spend a lot of effort, again, making functionality that makes it that simple to understand where you're at, what the changes have happened on those marketplaces. Automated change management is something that we offer because we automatically do all of that translation, all the mappings are done for you. So when there's new major requirements, like for example, Walmart and Amazon both have major new schemas that they released this year, all of our users are protected because we automatically translate to the new schemas, and any new requirements which they add, which they always do, are made really clear to the users, and you can see exactly what percentage of your listings are published, which ones have errors, and workflows to quickly address those. I think that most people, I'm talking a little bit about the functionality that really is coming from a real problem that we see in the space, which is most people don't have an understanding of their current status across the marketplaces, their current setup. They have nothing that can tell them, am I properly set up or not? And that's also got to be sort of in comparison to your current primary sales channel setup, in comparison to your Amazon setup or your Shopify setup. So that's something that we're able to offer to solve that major problem that we see. And that's why I think a lot of folks have difficulty hitting those minimum benchmarks of, let's say, trying to get 10% of your Amazon sales onto a place like Walmart. You really need to understand where the gaps are. And that's one thing that's really difficult without technology.
Sure. Steve, want to speak to any pitfalls you see, especially around fulfillment, and common mistakes that new sellers should avoid?
Sure. I think technology, like you said, is a key piece of it, and just making sure that if you're trying to do your own fulfillment with marketplace selling, that you fully understand those delivery requirements, how fast you got to get orders out the door and delivered to the customer, what kind of level of detail in terms of tracking and how quickly the customer needs to see that. And of course, back to kind of inventory management accuracy, which is where a platform like Zentail really plays a role. But yeah, what we bring to the table more is just the scalability. We talk to a lot of sellers that get on a marketplace and then things really take off. And so they've contacted us and said, we were doing a few dozen orders a week, and now we've quadrupled that very quickly. So scalability, and I think that's not only where a platform like Zentail plays a role, but with us, just if your order volume doubles overnight, that's on us to deal with, right? It's very difficult for an in-house fulfillment operation to kind of deal with that, but we have a bigger team. We've been doing this almost 25 years. We've got a lot of cross-training and the ability to bring in people quickly. So that's one of the biggest benefits to fulfillment. A fulfillment partner, anyway, on the marketplace side, is given the potential rapid growth you can see. But yeah, I agree with Dan in terms of knowing kind of, again, back to the nuances of different marketplace channels, and what works on one may not necessarily work on another, or at least there are different pieces you may need for Walmart versus Amazon. And then the consultative piece. We've, we don't do this. We do it a little bit on the delivery and shipping side, but just how to be successful on a marketplace. So we've established other partnerships as well beyond Zentail, just in terms of, okay, here's the marketplace. Here's what you should be doing to try to do well, or give yourself the best chance of success on that marketplace, whether it's from a technology standpoint or a fulfillment standpoint, or just how to kind of operate on it in general, how to set your pricing and what tools to modify pricing on an ongoing basis. And we've done the same with getting sellers into retail operations like Costco. I'm not trying to be on the Costco marketplace exclusively. I also want to be in their stores. So we do a lot of retail fulfillment as well, and just having partners that can consult with them on, how do you give yourself the best chance to get on Costco shelves or any other retailer.
Totally. This is kind of an interesting question. Steve, maybe you have some thoughts, and Dan too, but how has the rise of social commerce and like D2C strategies impacted the role of traditional marketplaces? And kind of just in general, like how can sellers stay on top of these changing trends and kind of stay agile and flexible there?
Yeah, good question. As I mentioned, we're hearing more about TikTok and Instagram shopping and Facebook Marketplace a little bit from prospective clients, and it's very new still, and they're really trying to promote it. But certainly the trend is more toward a younger demographic. Although even on TikTok, there's a huge percentage, up to 40, 45 years old. So, but in terms of consumer behavior, I think a lot more people are turning toward these different channels, the social channels, to find products, not just to engage in content or funny videos or whatever. They're already spending a tremendous amount of time on these platforms, and it allows the brand to establish, I think, more of a one-on-one connection with these potential customers. Whereas on Amazon, again, it's very difficult. It's Amazon's customer essentially. So that's kind of the benefit of the channel. I think why a lot of these Gen Z folks love it, because they have different values and they have different behaviors, and they're just used to being on these platforms. And I think it's a real threat to Amazon and to Google.
Sure. Dan, any thoughts there on?
Yeah. Facebook's been around for quite a bit at this point. There's been a lot of social buying behavior. I think a lot of the D2C brands, Shopify is sort of built again on the back of Facebook marketing, Google marketing, which are a little bit two different use cases. Google's a little bit more spear phishing and Facebook's more discovery. So like this has been around for some time, and there's certainly a lot of brands that can get pretty big doing something like this. And I think it's even more so now with, TikTok and as well as Instagram, which is copied a lot of that TikTok functionality. So now there's a lot of influencers who are promoting products. They get, a portion of the sales, this or that. I think that there's sort of major misconceptions sometimes around, who can be successful. It seems like this really lucrative place, and it is for certain types of companies. It's really hard to sort of take a Amazon business and say, okay, like I need to make this a TikTok business. It might work. It depends on the sort of the product and if you have the right skill set. I think we talked about that a bunch today. If you have access to the influencers, if you have a strong influencer strategy, it might not. And I think that the way that I look at it, and the way I think the world should look at it a little bit more, is sort of TikTok is this new like home shopping network, right? You have these folks on there. They're more or less shilling products, for profit on there, and I think that buyers are learning this. Like they get, you have a lot of this connected to a Temu or Shein. You have a lot of this connected to your D2C, and then you get the products, and it's like, okay, well, I bought it for so someone posted it. It looked cool. What I got was maybe something a little different. So it's kind of like a home shopping network with a lot less quality control on that. And I'm not knocking home shopping network either. Like, there's been lots of really great products that have launched from there. OxyClean, I can think of. So yeah, I mean, it might be this like great distribution channel. I think that's sort of how consumers look at something like that. It's a lower investment purchase. It's something cool that I saw someone promoting. I don't know what the quality might be. It's a little bit different than how someone might look at purchasing on a place like Amazon.
Sure. Awesome. I want to transition a little into what we've talked about: automation, obviously, both eFulfillment service and Zentail does a lot of automation, but I'm curious if either of you have any thoughts just in like how important it is for sellers to have a really strong tech stack that supports all these challenges, and obviously like EFS and Zentail, but I'm curious what you think of both other tech that can help and also how sellers can evaluate that tech. I think that can often be hard, and there's a lot of tools out there, and how do you kind of identify your needs and what will work best for your team? Anyone can start there.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak a little bit from the Zentail side. Zentail is not for everybody. I spoke a little bit earlier about like if I'm just starting out, should I use Zentail? Definitely not. I'd recommend getting your footing, getting proving market demand. You don't need more than one sales channel to do that. There's some great ways today where people are out there buying. And once you've proven something, then Zentail might be right for you, but it's not right for everyone. I think we really have a bigger focus on folks that are really controlling the listing content and want to win by having really high quality listings showing up high. Those tend to be brands, could be white label brands, authorized resellers, folks that really care about that listing content. If it's more selling on competitive products, we have lots of folks using us for that today. But you might need other parts of your stack, like a really solid repricer. You might not care about the listing quality as much. You might not care about the listing content if that's not something you're even really interacting with, besides putting on an offer on some of these marketplaces.
Sure, great. Steve, any thoughts there, or also any thoughts on this poll that's going live?
Yeah, I think scaling for sure, in terms of that's a big reason to invest in technology. So I agree with Dan, especially for newer brands or ones that haven't gotten maybe to that 1 million GMV on the channel, really hone in on that channel is our advice, and try not to spread yourself too thin and give 20% to 5 channels. Really figure out a channel, figure out your branding, figure out, what makes the most sense from a pricing standpoint, and then you can start to scale. And that's where technology becomes, more important. If you're just starting out on your own, for instance, Shopify store, I'm not ready for a marketplace. I want to figure some things out with my brand first and my pricing and what those pricing rules should be when I do get on a marketplace that has stricter rules and a lot more competition. Then, you'll have certain apps and plugins that work well with Shopify that help to streamline things. But in terms of really investing in more tech, I would say the scaling and let me get back to that poll where you.
Oh, sorry. Let me find it. There we go.
Yeah, enhancing the overall customer experience. I mean, we can get into an AI discussion, which is evolving every single day, of course, but the level of personalization that you can offer, and again, a lot of that is built into some of these modern platforms inherently, and it's getting more robust, every single week and month in terms of how you can personalize the consumer shopping experience in terms of what they see and what products are recommended, and follow-up email marketing campaigns and all that. So I think some of that, when you're starting out, if you can find a cost-effective tool or plugin to help enhance your level of personalization and marketing with one channel, I guess my main point is, focus on a one channel at a time.
Sure. I have some listing questions I want to dig into with you, Dan, but you brought up AI, Steve, and I do want to ask how you both foresee automation and AI playing a larger role in multi-channel management, optimizing listings, fulfillment. Just curious your take on that, because AI, I know, is very buzzy and everyone's thinking about it.
Yeah, I think, again, it can do same kind of theme as don't try to do too much with AI too quickly. Like, where do you see maybe the lowest hanging fruit? Where are some of the gaps that exist with my ability to get things done quickly, or to personalize the consumer shopping experience, or with certain marketing related activities or product listings? So I think, where I see AI evolving rapidly and offering a lot of value to e-commerce sellers is with product listings and optimizing those and getting them up quickly. And like Dan has been saying, really making sure they're appropriate per channel that you're selling on. Inventory management, of course, and just being able to look at sales history and anticipate stock shortages, maybe even automatically reordering from your suppliers based on that. So you're not even doing anything, and it's kind of all automated. I don't know that we're fully there yet, but certainly there are tools that can help you accurately predict inventory requirements and even do so by channel. And then on the fulfillment side, we're starting to utilize AI in a number of different ways at our company, from how we develop integrations and optimize those integrations for our clients, to just on our shop floor and the way that we pick and pack and how we are optimized with that. And I think AI can also help just identify some new market opportunities and trends. That's a big factor, I think, for e-commerce sellers. How do I make sure I'm what's next? What's the next product? Or how do I make sure I'm capitalizing on these trends, which change all the time, and something might hit on TikTok or Instagram, and how do I have the agility to react to that? And I think to some extent AI can help, not necessarily with those super trendy things, but more like looking at an industry as a whole and figuring out what kind of might come next.
Awesome. Dan, what are your 2 cents?
Yeah, thank you. This one's a complicated one for me personally. I'll say, I've been around AI for a while. I was getting my PhD in computer science before starting the business. I have, graduate level stuff in computer learning, machine learning. That's evolved a lot over time. I have a personal relationship with Sam Altman, who started OpenAI. He actually sent out a lot of the intros for us when we were raising money. It's super helpful. He's been a fan of the business. So, and I'm a huge fan of what he built over at OpenAI. It's changing the world right now, right? So I love the direction of AI. I think it's really sort of crazy how good it is today, and it's also in a lot of cases not good enough. So I think this is one area where there's a lot of noise out today, and I think there's been a lot of investment in AI businesses. There's been a lot of integration of AI into like everything that you're doing in a very loud way, and I think that there's a little bit of pushback on that from some of the results in the real world application. So I think that one area where people might get it wrong today is like, plug in the AI and let it do everything. You can see that in sort of the sense of listings, like, hey, what should I fill in for this? What should I fill in for this? You can ask the AI, you can integrate the API, and you can get a whole lot of, they call them hallucinations, but I call it bullshit. You'll get a whole lot of bullshit, right? And, I think there's a lot of overseas companies that are using it pretty effectively to create Amazon listings today, translating from Chinese to English, and it's probably fairly good at that if it has a lot of context. But we tested a lot internally here to see how we can actually deploy things that are going to be useful. We do use it in our back end for a number of things on the business side, as well as like Steve said, for development. I mean, Copilot's just amazing at speeding up engineers. It used to be you go to Google and you type in something and then you see some top responses on Quora or whatnot and Stack Overflow. But the world has changed where now it can sort of write the next block of code for you, and you read it and you're like, it's not exactly right, but it does speed folks up a tremendous amount. So I think that's sort of key, having the quality assurance part of it. You being the editor ultimately in AI that works for content, for everything, for engineering, and we're looking at ways that we can do that for our users to help speed them up without bombarding them with again what I'll call bullshit.
Yeah, that's more accurate than hallucinations. I would definitely agree.
I figured you had an opinion when Lauren started laughing when she asked you about it. I completely agree about the quality assurance. I mean, we use it, but it's not taking over entire processes. It's making some things quicker a little bit, or offering, some advice maybe, or here's a suggestion. But yeah, we've seen it where it's also not, certainly not perfect.
Totally. Yeah, I always like to think, because coming from a marketing background, AI was very much a scary of like, oh my gosh, all our jobs are going to go away. And I've learned over the years we've had AI that it's a helpful tool, and it's still not a human, and there's still so much that we are needed for, and to just treat AI that way. And like that helps ease the scares of, oh my gosh, it's going to take over everything, which who knows, maybe in several years that could happen. I don't know. But I'm optimistic it won't. It won't be an iRobot situation or whatever where robots take over.
We'll see.
We'll see. You're right. I'll eat my words when that comes to fruition. But we're getting close to time, so we'll transition to some Q&A in a couple minutes. So drop your questions in the chat. But Dan, I really wanted to just touch a little more on the importance of maintaining listings and kind of what like listing uptime and listing quality, why they matter, how they impact a seller's GMV and even the customer experience. So if you can speak to that, I'd love to dig in a little.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I threw out some numbers earlier. We really try to get folks to a certain level of success on uptime first. Listing uptime we define basically as, a lot of people might recognize it as a publish rate, but what percentage of my items, of the listings that I'm trying to get up on this channel, are actually published. So that's what we look at listing uptime. We track it over time. It's called uptime because there's changes that can happen which take the listings down. So that's how we like to track it here, where you can think of it as your publish rate. If your listings aren't published, no one can buy them. It's a really simple concept, but the publish rate across the industry is sort of horrifically low, especially if you're comparing to, let's say, your Amazon store, if that's where you do your primary business, and you start to look at your Walmart store, your eBay store, your Shopify store, wherever else you might be trying to go. So the publish rate is really horrific across the industry, I think mainly because people don't have the visibility into all the unique requirements and what's going wrong, and they're spending a lot of time in their Seller Central. So that's really critically important for first layer of success. Again, if you have your listings up and you have inventory that can actually fulfill to the requirements of the marketplace, and you have those badges, that's really important. I'll call out listing quality as well. There's some, really sort of more abstract benefits. They're pretty obvious for someone in a marketing background, but where do you rank on the page for a specific search is really important to how many sales you're going to make. And so if you have high listing quality, you're going to be ranking higher on the user searches because the marketplace is going to have more confidence in the purchase decision of the user. The user is going to have a lot more information to make a qualified purchase, so that the return rate is going to be a lot lower. I'll actually pull up a slide here. If you can create a really high quality listing, you're going to rank better. You're going to create more sales. This will lead to more 5-star reviews, which leads to a higher listing quality. This is a flywheel that everyone sort of intrinsically understands on Amazon, but it might be a little less obvious on another channel. And it's for both sort of that spear phishing as well as discovery. So you start to use a filter system on the side and you don't have a key attribute filled in, you're not going to show up in the search results. And, again, users might not even have the confidence to make that purchase. And the marketplaces track this too. So they know that by users filling in these fields, the conversion rates go up. So that's why they're going to promote you more. And I'll also call out that the badging that you get on some of these marketplaces, you don't even have access to these badges, which have great benefits outside of additional sales, which is probably the main benefit, honestly. You have these badges, they're going to rank you higher, and the users are going to purchase more confidently. But you also have discounts to your referral fees from Walmart, for example, for getting the pro seller badge or even the advanced seller badge. They recently changed these requirements. They used to require a listing quality. They once again require listing quality. So you want to get that content score up so you're available for things like deals, that you have the pro seller badge, that you're creating these sales. There's sort of this hard value you get at the end of the process there.
Awesome. That segues actually perfectly into, we got some questions submitted ahead of time about like why use Zentail over a Shopify app or over the Walmart Seller Center, and like what specific advantage Zentail poses over those. So do you mind speaking to that, Dan?
Yeah, I'll try to cover that real quick. I know we're close to time here. I think two very different answers for those two use cases. The short answer is we might not be. It depends on your use case. If you have one product and you feel confident that you can sort of go through all the steps and you can get it available, you can provide you can get the listing quality to where it needs to get, and you can do all the fulfillment without needing automation there. That might be possible, certainly, and certainly a lot of people are doing that today. If you have more SKUs, it becomes that problem is sort of exponential. Most folks, I'll say, do not have the pro seller badge today. Most folks do not have the listing quality where they need to get it. And that's because they don't have the tooling in place, the automation in place to make it possible to achieve the results. And then for something like Shopify, I'll say quickly, they're great at what they do. They provide an awesome spot for you to build your website, for you to build your brand. They make it as easy as possible. There's not a ton of structured data there. Being successful on Shopify is more about your marketing ability than providing that structured data. That structured data is really important for somewhere like Amazon, where they have a massive catalog and the purchase decisions is different. So trying to tack on an app onto Shopify and expand to a new channel, I haven't really seen people be super successful with something like that with any level of complexity. So, you have to sort of try and bend this back-end platform and create these meta fields and then figure out how to map them and have no idea whether or not things are working or not. It might work really well for that OMS, IMS piece, which Steve also called out earlier, like for TikTok shops. Same thing with us. Like, it's really easy for us to pull in the TikTok orders. The OMS, IMS piece of The inventory and order flow for Shopify might work great, but what you don't see is that your listings aren't up at all, most likely, right, on any channel that has any level of complexity.
Totally. Thank you. Sorry, I know I gave you a short amount of time for that big question. We have another that was submitted ahead, and Steve, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. How do you handle returns across multiple marketplaces while keeping customer satisfaction high and operational costs low?
Great question. Yeah, returns management is kind of a nightmare for a lot of e-commerce sellers. And I think just like on the outbound side where, a seller can utilize us for multiple channels and making sure we're getting the fulfillment right and getting that order on time and just some cost efficiencies and scalability relative to that. Same as returns management. We can, with our integration with a lot of these channels, we just can make the returns process a little more seamless, and you can ship returns on our discounted accounts, which is another reason that a lot of sellers go with us and 3PLs in general is the buying power that we get for shipping rates. So that is where the cost effectiveness comes in to some extent, is just the shipping alone. We can provide discounts with that, but just having one consolidated place where we can bring in all your merchandise, quickly get it turned around and repackaged or quality assured or whatever it may be. And we do a lot of that for our clients. A lot of them have different requirements in terms of what they want us to do when we get a return, ship it back to them, stock it, repackage it, maybe even something a little more, personalized, and we can do all that for them.
Amazing. We'll do one more question, and then I want to end with just your advice to sellers. But Maria had a question here about quantity of inventory, which they have available in a logistics center. And I also just want to expand that a little to these smaller businesses with handmade products. They might not be able to see how they can fit on certain marketplaces that we've been talking about. So, and both of you can speak to this too, but any advice for them as well? Steve, if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, with handmade in particular, I guess it's getting, in terms of where you're going to sell, it's back to, figuring out which marketplace makes the most sense based on the target demographic. Etsy obviously is a go-to for that. That's the audience that's on there. Amazon has a handmade marketplace for that particular kind of thing. In terms of how much stock you should keep on hand, that again is going to vary depending on, of course, sales, but also just the marketplace requirement. Amazon generally wants about 60 days worth of stock, but even that can vary by seller and by demand and by SKU. And so this is where a platform like Zentail can help. As with eFulfillment, we can keep excess inventory stored at our warehouse at a low rate, because obviously if you're ordering in bulk and it's not handmade, you might get a discount for a higher quantity of inventory being ordered from your supplier. So store the overflow with us at a cost-effective rate, and we'll replenish the marketplace based on their requirements. But for handmade, it's a little different, of course. But in general, having 3 to 6 months of stock is a good idea. Awesome.
Dan, any advice for smaller businesses with kind of niche products where they kind of look?
Yeah, again, it really depends on the business. If it's handmade products, it might be difficult to get a ton of stock, and it might be more important to make sure that you're in the sort of one best place where users are looking to buy your products. If you're able to sort of scale the inventory to a point where it makes sense, then you might need to look for other spots where people are looking for that product.
Awesome. Well, this has been amazing. We have 1 minute left, and I just want to end with both Dan and Steve sharing any one bit of advice they have to sellers wanting to expand onto other marketplaces, or what you both hope people who joined and will watch the recording after, what they'll take away from this. So Steve, want to go?
Yeah, this has been great. Thank you, Lauren and Dan, and everybody who's watching and will get the recording. I really enjoyed it. I've kind of echoed this a number of times. I think my one piece of advice is just to not rush into a lot of different channels. Like Dan has said as well, really figure out what works well for your brand, who your audience is, get feedback on your products as best you can prior to going on these marketplaces, because you can do all the things in the world to optimize your product listing and optimize your fulfillment and try to get sales. But then if your product's no good, you're not going to get good reviews. So make sure you have good feedback and figure it out, and then really do your homework in terms of, which marketplace is right for you, and try not to do 4 at one time.
Sure. Dan,
Yeah,
Words of wisdom.
I appreciate that. I think I touched on a number of things today. I don't want to try and cram that down maybe into a 1-minute thing, but I will offer for a more sort of individual consultation. We have a great team here at Zentail. We don't try to sell Zentail to anyone that it doesn't make sense to sell Zentail to. We're happy to talk and look at the unique situation, make recommendations about what we think could be really successful for the business. Again, oftentimes doesn't include us. Sometimes it does, right? But is your business something that Target might want? Is that worth doing an application? Like, those are the types of questions that we can answer. We can answer benchmark questions. Here's kind of where I'm doing, my sales are doing on these other places. How does that compare to what you see? Really happy to answer those questions. I want to speak directly. You asked me the questions earlier from Nikki and Kina. It looks like, how is Zentail different than using Seller Center directly or Shopify apps? Come do a demo. Like, we'll show you exactly what the platform is. It's very different than what you're going to see today on Walmart Seller Center or, the Shopify apps. And, happy to spend time with you, whether or not it's a right fit.
Amazing. We're over time, and I'm not mad about it. This was a great discussion. We will be sharing out the recording, and I know there were a lot of questions that we didn't get to. We will reach out and connect with you all. I know there were some very specific questions, so you're not forgotten. But just want to say thank you to Steve and Dan. This was really great, and thank you to everyone that joined. Definitely check out. We'll add links to LinkedIn and demo centers, everything. So stay in touch, keep the conversation going, and hope you all have a good rest of your day. Thanks everyone for joining. See ya.